Hello and welcome to the Monarch Human Performance Podcast. I'm your host, John Sillis. On this show, we aim to interview leaders from a range of performance disciplines within the tactical performance space to help you improve performance at the individual and organizational level. Now, if this is your first time listening, welcome to the show, guys. You'll notice we don't run any ads here, but we do ask for you to pay a simple and small fee. And that fee is this. If you find value in the show, I'm pretty confident you are because we have some incredible guests each week, then please share the show. If you're chatting with friends and colleagues about education and development, please recommend us. As I said, we don't run ads here and we continue to grow organically through you, the listener. So please spread the word and help us get this information out to a lot more people. Now, on this week's show, I'm joined by Joseph Alamini. Joseph is a solutions architect for KBR's Government Solutions US business. In his current role, he is a strategist and technical expert on human performance and associated technology for business development. His expertise is utilized to drive business development, monitor market conditions, and project market trends, as well as foster relationships with industry leaders in the health and human performance domain. Joe received his undergraduate degree in exercise physiology from the University of Massachusetts. He also holds a graduate degree from the University of South Carolina in exercise science. During his studies here, Joe was the program manager for the most comprehensive assessment of physical activity during U.S. Army initial entry training. His formal training spans 20 years from various assignments in and out of uniform at the U.S. Army Research Institute of Environmental Medicine, Army Public Health Center, and Defense Health Agency Research and Development Directorate. He also serves in the U.S. Army's National Guard as a clinical laboratory coordinator. Having these diverse experiences and escalating roles and responsibility allows him to see the health and human performance space from the tactical, operational, and strategic level. In this episode, Joe talks about his journey into the military, his move to work with KBR, what KBR are doing to help enhance the tactical organization landscape, some of the emerging themes in the tactical space, and some of the challenges and opportunities in the tactical space.
With large company KBR, we're looking to innovate in the industry, we're looking to grow the business, and we're looking to be influential in the next 10 years of what healthy and human performance looks like. And this is in accordance with what our customers would want to see their vision come through as.
Good afternoon, Joe, and welcome to the podcast, bud.
Oh, thanks, John. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Hey, no worries, man. Thank you once again, Joe, for just, initially reaching out over social media and connecting. It's been great just to meet you and have some great conversations so far with you, dude.
Yeah, no, this is a tremendous opportunity. It's always good to meet like-minded professionals in this field. Some of my colleagues have been on your show. We were discussing that beforehand, and they're singing your praises. And this is a much-needed voice in the community to sort of socialize the let's say less than traditional aspects of strength conditioning, integrated healthcare, and helping our tactical professionals and allied care providers.
Definitely, man. I appreciate that, dude. Obviously, Joe, as I've mentioned, me and you have had the chance to chat a fair bit and connect, and you've got a really interesting background to you as well and good insight into the way things are going. For anyone who hasn't come across you before, Joe, and the work you've done, can you just give us an overview of where your career started out and where you're currently at?
Yeah. I'll kind of like scope it out for. I think everyone in this field kind of has the same sort of story. Let's just say, high school athlete, and my senior year, I just wanted an advantage because I wasn't that good of an athlete, and I'm still not into my elder years. But I wanted an advantage, and I thought, well, maybe I can take advantage of science, right? And I didn't know what that actually meant at the time, but I took an anatomy physiology course, and I really, kind of enjoyed learning about it. And I just then started working out on my own. I started reading all these sort of older bodybuilding magazines, so Muscle Media 2000, Muscular Development, and this is part of the time when these high-powered scientists were writing for them. So Dr. Fleck, Dr. Kramer, for example, they were writing for muscular development in the, showing my age, but in the mid 90s. So, then I go off to college, no longer in athletics, but, just really interested in the field of health and wellness and how does a muscle get larger? How do you increase your aerobic capacity? So I majored in biology. I didn't even know a program like exercise science like that existed, but I just continued to read, and I went up at a really good undergraduate institution that had very high-powered researchers in the field of exercise science. So from there, during a sort of internship, pardon me, let me step back. I had to do an internship for my senior year of college, and everyone was doing strength and conditioning, or they were trying to get on, semi-professional, professional teams. And I was late to the game because I completely procrastinated. And there was 2 opportunities available, both the research facilities. And I said, well, I don't like research, but I had to do it. So I think we're going to get to it later, but so I decided to do a research internship. It's called the USARIM, it's Army Research Institute of Environmental Medicine. They do a tremendous amount of physical performance research. Loved it. My mentor convinced me to join the military. I think I was there for maybe 6 weeks, still in college, and I enlisted into the military. I went to the delayed entry program, and as soon as I was done my internship, I left for basic training and came back. The laboratory was able to sort of grab me back from for my training, and was there for about 6 years and spent that doing performance physiology research, and just really loved it. Left there, went back to graduate school. I left active duty, wound up realizing that I really missed that culture, that culture, the military culture was sort of in me. And I missed that camaraderie. So I joined the National Guard again while in graduate school. And I'm still in National Guard. Did that, just continue on from sort of job to job, and had some great opportunities working with some of the new physical performance tests that the Army has put out in the last like 3 to 5 years. And I'm currently with.
Obviously, Joe, awesome career path that sounds like you've had so far. And if we take it right back for a second there, I mean, you're preaching to the choir, dude. Early 90s, I got into like bodybuilding as well, and like hearing you chat about muscular development, Flex magazine, that was like the holy grail to me. I was just like, okay, so this is performance training. Obviously, every week, same sort of training split. It's like, okay, cool. But what was your sport in high school, dude?
I played baseball. I played baseball in high school.
Nice, man.
So
nice.
yeah, and in and around that time, John, like there wasn't this, or rather, either there wasn't, or I couldn't find what we have today with these sort of professionalized, strength and conditioning coaches for baseball, and now it's even positional, and this is by sport. This is very apparent, and I mean, I think this frame comes from track and field events, where I know track and field, it goes back 20, 30 years, about, you have certain sprint type coaches and certain throwing coaches and certain, long distance and like distance running coaches. So, but that didn't exist back then. The only thing really existed back then was, from what I could find, was, these hybrid, science interested people that also were bodybuilders. So, this goes back to, it influenced me was Charles Poliquin, who was a Canadian strength coach, primarily with the bobsled team, but his work was, one of the reasons why I'm in this field now. It's just seminal. It leveraged science. So he was talking about, for example, back in 1996, like post-activation facilitation, sort of, doing your strength exercise first, followed by, your sort of plyometric or ballistic exercise first. And that's sort of, compound set now, and it's sort of commonplace in certain strength conditioning arenas, but back then it didn't exist.
Definitely, man. That's the interesting thing. There's guys even then, like you say, who were just starting to push the envelope a bit, even though it was very much just the bodybuilding heavy sort of things. And then it's just like, I think me and you both share that same belief of like trying to seek out knowledge and finding better ways to do things as well. And it's just like that led me, especially I'd say, from the bodybuilding realm into more of the sports performance and conditioning side of things as well. And obviously information has slowly grown over the years, but yeah, it's been an interesting process, dude. But I was going to say, dude, you mentioned there, you get to college, you get out and you do your 6-week student internship, and you get to go to USARIM. That time at USARIM, is that what swayed you? That you mentioned there briefly about your mentor there, your educator, saying should consider the military. Is that what made you want to go down the military route, or was it something you always had sort of in the back of your mind?
So I have family in the military, and
Okay.
you know, I grew up in a very military agnostic home, though, not pushing it one way or the other. But you know, to specifically answer your question, so I probably knew within a week, maybe 2 weeks, that like, oh, like, wow, like we can determine what happens like when you go to altitude, like those physiological phenomena that are known. So that are deleterious to human performance. Like we can predict that. And oh my God, like we have facilities downstairs that are doing that. Like, oh my, like this to me was such a, that, like, as you say, that was like the pivot moment for me. Cause in the mid 90s or sort of the later 90s, you know, an exercise physiology, exercise science degree, like I don't know how I could have sort of made that into a career. But as soon as I got into Usarium and with my mentor Brad Nindle, he's a university professor at Pittsburgh. He runs one of the largest sort of military research laboratories in the world. He really inspired me to, you know, he's like, I think, you know, you'd be a, you know, good researcher. You have the sort of the mindset of wanting to understand why things occur. So, and you know, over 20 years, I've kind of found is that it's not so much your degree, your sort of your confirmations, your credentials. The sort of scientific mindset is being able to systematically dissolve a complex issue into its constituent components. Okay, what's the existing knowledge base? What's the current problem, and what's the burden of that problem? That burden could be injuries for the military, it could be healthcare costs, it could be, you know, time lost from training. So you sort of contextualize that problem, and presumably your hypothesis would lead to new idea generation that would sort of confirm equivocation in that field or in that topic, or it could completely refute it. Maybe you think that, for example, that exercise during basic training is not related to injury, but it's more so, you know, related to, you know, food choice or cumulative physical activity, and something that would, you know, kind of would shake the foundation of what's, you know, what's sort of commonplace. Yeah. So just having that mindset is tremendously important, and it sort of bleeds over into other aspects of one's life. And I'm sure you experience this too. It's like the sort of like when you're talking to a scientist, you know, like I deal a lot with engineers, like, you know, you're talking to engineers.
Yeah.
Completely different mindset. Or if you're talking to attorneys, you know, you're talking to, well, I shouldn't say, you know, you talk to attorneys, but to me, like let me go back to the scientists. When I'm talking to a scientist, it's kind of like there's a commonality of the language, there's a flow, there's a way of looking at issues and looking at problems to sort of, like, again, dissolve into its constituent components, to be able to, you know, logically assume what would occur with your intervention, and to maybe have some predictability in the outcome based off of what's known, what you're presuming to do, and, you know, plus your sort of your singular research intervention. But yeah, but going back to the original question, that to me, the time at Usarium completely pivoted me to my career, and then looking back on it, it's the best decision I ever made in my life.
I mean, it's from what I've seen and read about Usarium, it's just an incredible facility, and the work that's been done there as well. I mean, to have the opportunity to be a part of that must have been something special, dude, as well. Obviously, how long did you serve? You know, as a fully commissioned guy into the military?
Yeah, so I was active for about 8 years. Then I left for a few months. I actually think a few weeks. And then I've been in for about 12 now.
Nice, man. Nice, dude. And then obviously finishing up after 8 years, taking a step away, you know, what prompted the move away? And, you know, obviously you're saying you're at KBR now. Why did you decide to go in and start working with KBR as well?
So what I mean, the first part of that question, what prompted me to go away was graduate school. I had a tremendous opportunity to go to University of South Carolina. They were conducting a multi-year project looking at physical activity, objectively measured physical activity during basic training, which is something that hasn't been done before. I mean, there's been sort of smatterings of research using pedometry, research using direct observation, but nothing going in with accelerometry or gyroscopy or GPS or anything like that. So we were talking to my mentor at the time, and he's like, you should do this. It's a good opportunity. You know, you're starting to grow out of your, you're growing, you need to grow into a new discomfort zone, I think was his words. Because I was there, I probably could have stayed there probably another year or two and just been content and maybe, come back to the contractor if I wanted to get out and stay aboard this sort of USARIUM team. But I thought it prudent to, go back to graduate school, get an advanced degree, expose myself to different sort of culture, different learning environment, of which academia is a significant shift in culture, shift in learning environment coming off of active duty, especially from a sort of high-powered, research laboratory that their main function is to produce evidence-based results that, help, keep soldiers ready, help keep them lethal, help keep them healthy.
Mm-hmm.
But no, I just wanted to challenge myself. I knew also, I would have to have that degree to confirm sort of credentials in the field, and so it's fine. I mean, but the main driver for my going there, because I had applied to a few schools, but my main driver is I knew I was going into a DoD funded project that would produce some interesting information that otherwise hasn't been done in the form of measuring physical activity during basic training.
Mm-hmm.
So that was my decision to leave, and that was an amazing project that we did, and I'm sure as science goes, is that we still have results in the in the hopper, and
Yeah.
we're actively publishing one of the sort of the larger data sets on that. So we're really looking forward to that, and are interested to see if we get our favorable reviews back by the end of the summer.
Nice, dude, nice. And then obviously with KBR, was that how did that work? Did you seek out KBR? Did they seek you out?
Yeah. So how that seeking out KBR or having them seek me out, right? So it was the former of the two. I sought them out. So about 2 years ago, I kind of did a sort of a check on myself. Where do I want to be in the next 10, 15 years? What's a sustainable career trajectory? Where's the field going? Things related to that. And I said, well, I like the sort of the science side. I like the tactical side of it, of it being human performance. And I said, well, that will, I would probably have to be like a program administrator, and I don't want to do that. Just isn't for me. I've dabbled in that arena a little bit before. It just wasn't for me. But I was interested to kind of understand, like, how do these companies get these contracts? I mean, this to me seems like, a completely new process. I was exposed to it for a little bit, helping with proposal support for a company I used to work for. And I never kind of quite understood it, but I was always interested in it. I said, well, I'd like to, use my expertise, like research and science and sort of understanding, soldier-centric or service members-centric sort of, issues. Well, I'd like to use my expertise to, help a company, grow. But what does that actually look like? I mean, that's like a great concept, but like, what's your strategy for enacting that? So then, I looked at the sort of the competitive space, which KBR is, competitor in the space of health human performance. And I just said, what's their vision? What are they currently doing? What are their company values? What's their corporate social responsibility sort of role? And after sort of, doing some due diligence on all these companies, I said, I think KBR would be a good fit. So it wasn't like the traditional, let me apply for this position, I saw it's opening up, or I heard that, a colleague of mine works at a company X and, they're going to open up a position. So I'll kind of use that sort of inroads to sort of be a favorable candidate. No, I just distilled it down to KBR, and I said, okay, well, this seems like the company for me. And and then now what, right? And this is something how how I'll never understand how the stars aligned is maybe a week or so after I did this exercise where I'm looking at different companies, I see this position pop up. It's called Solutions Architect in Health and Human Performance. And I go, oh, okay. So I knew a few solutions architect, but it was more so on the engineering side. So, or engineering and cloud side. So when you hear that, so rather when people hear that I'm a solutions architect, they think I have a degree in engineering. They think I do something with cloud-based services, to which, some of our company does do that, but I don't do that as a solutions architect. And then, you get these job postings, John, right? And you read down them, you go, oh my goodness, like, this company wants, that unicorn. So like, what are they actually looking for? So I said, well, this seems too interesting to not apply, but it was very intimidating for me to apply. I know that's sort of a paradox there, but you only get one shot to make a good impression. If you kind of just apply and with no follow up, it's kind of, it puts that candidate in a disadvantageous position versus being aggressive.
Mm-hmm.
And so before I applied, I just with the strategy I had in mind, I was like, well, if I narrowed it down, if I did this much work in narrowing it down, let me kind of figure out who the players are in the company and reach out to them directly and say, this looks like a great position. I would love to add value. Here's how I think we can add some value to your sort of challenges, as sort of articulated in the position description, and would love to chat. And I tell you what, it's interesting when you reach out to people that are vested in other people to really be positive in the industry. I got back, and this is just through LinkedIn, and I got back, 2 different people got back to me within a day. And like, it was off from there, and it was several rounds of interviews, and, not gonna lie, a lot of anxiety and a lot of prep for interviews, but yeah, like they wound up, awarding me the position. So I'm just completely thankful, to have this opportunity, and kind of, and don't take it lightly. I take it in the sense of, myself as a service member, like, knows the importance of maintaining health for readiness, knows the importance of some of these enterprise-wide programs that the services, the Department of Defense, the military services are now putting out, and its ability to lower injury rates, get people healthier, lower incidence of obesity, decrease, let's say, high-risk factors like smoking or alcohol consumption. So this to me is, and I remember, I think this was like my last sort of like parting shot. I wrote this down to underline. I told my now boss, I said, look, this is something for me that's not only a tremendous professional opportunity, and it is, but this is like a personal drive with me to better the industry, based off of not what I know on the science side, because you can Google things, you can look it up on PubMed, you can get access to every journal, right? But if you don't have that context of what it means to to not have services, what it means to what it would mean to a service member to have a strength conditioning coach on site, what it would mean to have a strength or an athletic trainer on site, these are things that I've thought 15 years ago, and rather actually a lot of people thought this a long time ago, but having that sort of professional drive to be with KBR is great, but having this sort of the personal context, understand why these programs are important, why growing the business is important, I think kind of really allows me to give a little different tinge to the our sort of solutions we're offering our customers.
Definitely do. And I mean, you say there about having that little bit of anxiety and intimidation of even applying to KBR in that role, and I mean, looking from the outside in as a guy based in the UK, like, I'd seen some roles, popped up for just like either physical therapy or strength conditioning within KBR's structure. And I just saw it very much, I just saw the tip of the iceberg of it. I didn't realize just how big a company they are and everything they are doing as well, and like just how widespread they are as well, not only within the tactical space, but obviously going out into space
Yeah.
as well. It's just huge, absolutely huge company now, dude.
Yeah. So it's interesting. It's interesting you said that. I mean, I've been with them for a while, and probably on a weekly basis, I go, oh, we're doing that. Like we're in the like renewable energy space right now. You know, we've entered that for a while now. I didn't know that. And I go, oh, that's kind of interesting. It's also, it makes, kind of like again, that gets back to the sort of corporate social responsibilities, as being good sort of arbiters in the industry of, what right looks like, as we say in the military. So you see these things come out on social media, you go, well, I'm proud to be sort of aligned with this organization that's, doing good in the world and trying to make a difference for the better for people.
Definitely, man. I just want to touch on as well, because obviously you mentioned the post of like solutions architect within health
Yeah.
and performance. So
Mhm.
what exactly, are you trying to do with that role now, Joe, making it your own and pushing things forward? What are you driving at?
Yeah. So we'll just frame it, right? What is a solutions architect, right? So this is my definition. It's the person or people's in charge of technical visions for a particular solution for a particular issue.
Mm-hmm.
This could be tactical. This could be from a management perspective. These are usually just kind of nuanced ideas that have to be coalesced into a proposal that you would submit into a customer. And what that entails is constant reading, both on wearables, on research, on who's doing what in academia. So like what research laboratories are doing what kind of portfolios they have, understanding who's presenting where,
Mm-hmm.
what are the sort of the emerging trends, what are, what we call mega trends, i.e. where is the health human performance going to be in 20 years, right? Is it going to look like it looks like now? Probably not as indicated, but like what we were talking about before, back in, the mid 90s, there really was just bodybuilding sort of, you had to sort of extract what you could from bodybuilding and kind of, well, I can kind of apply it here to football, or rugby or whatever, well, I'm getting stronger and my muscles are getting, larger. So I guess that's a good thing. So we have to, be able to sort of, project based off, integrating all this information we're getting in from where the wearables markets are, something I've seen recently is who's driving trends. This could be venture capital firms, like where are they investing their money, and there's some pretty good resources that you can figure out who's doing what and where. But getting back to what a solutions architect is you have to integrate all this disconnected information on the tactical side, on the managerial side, and you have to come to an understanding of what's best for your customer, what is your customer asking for, and be able to integrate that into a proposal and say, well, we can deliver this for you, and here's what we propose. And so sometimes that's delivering them exactly what they're asking for. And sometimes that's, delivering them what they're asking for. And here's what we can also provide as a solution to your current challenge, let's just say.
Cool. Nice one. So, I mean, like you say there, like brief snapshot of it, but very, very diverse role as well. And just all the things, all the moving parts you've got to coordinate and pull together. One thing I want to pull back on there, Joe, you mentioned was just like as part of your role is, looking ahead and saying like, right, what are the major emerging themes we're seeing here, the mega themes, over the next 20 years that we should start prepping for now and stuff. So on that, like, Can you say, like, what have you seen so far would be as the emerging themes in the tactical space currently?
Yeah. And this is, this isn't sort of proprietary information. It's out there, but you kind of have to drill down and say, oh, they're doing it and they're also doing it, and this company is, or this organization is thinking about doing it. And I can provide specifics too, right, for this. So one of the sort of mega themes and trends we're seeing is embedded resources. So that means taking those allied health providers, those dietitians, those physical therapists, occupational therapists, strength conditioning coaches, taking them out of that treatment facility, out of the hospital, out of the clinic, and putting them in at an appropriate level that an organization, could coalesce a team, like a human performance integrated team, and have service members, especially this is more so on the DoD side, but there are some civilian recent advances that are utilizing this sort of frame, but they're able to have this integrated human performance team at a level that's scalable, that they can have their, again, on the DoD side, their service members, their men and women in uniform, come to them and say, I'm having an ankle issue. I don't know what to eat. My sleep is terrible. What do you advise? And so you have that personal one-on-one interaction with that professional, with the strength conditioning coach, athletic trainer, occupational therapist. And so that will, allow them to stay in training for longer. It also sort of obviates the cost on the healthcare side, I say healthcare kind of in cost, healthcare cost in quotes. But it allows that service member to retain in training as best as they can. Obviously, if there's an injury, there's not much you can do. You kind of have to take them out of training for a little bit, but you're removing the sort of the healthcare component, bringing it down to the individualized level that's scalable. You're socializing those programs to your audience. It could be service members, it could be, fire EMS, it could be, any sort of operating in a tactical space. But you're letting them know, like, these professionals are here for you. You can utilize them, and that could be prescriptive, utilization. i.e. they're mandated to go at least, once a quarter or once a month, or it could be, voluntary. And so some of the trends we're seeing now is it's mostly voluntary. There's no sort of governance, driving. You have to see the strength conditioning coach at least, one time a month, or see the athletic trainer at least one time a month. And those programs seem to be effective.
Yeah.
It's bleeding over a little bit recently. We've seen embedded resources come out in a sort of large international company. And I say large, it's possibly one of the largest in the world, have embedded resources for their workforce in their warehouses. There's no sort of data back on the efficacy of that program, but there's no reason to suggest otherwise that it wouldn't. I mean, the Army's had good success with them, so has the Marine Corps, for these embedded resources programs. Another sort of mega trend we see is sensor utilization, so wearables, technology. So this could be your watch, your ring, something in your shoe. And it's not so much the individual device. So the wearer, is getting feedback for behavioral modification or cueing from their Apple Watch, let's just say, or their Oura Ring, right? So, but one of the trends we're seeing is the sort of as a human as a weapon system sort of concept goes, is it's the integration of all that sort of data. So it's not just one piece saying this is how long you slept. It's saying here's how long you slept. It also can cross communicate with a similar type device to say, well, this is giving me one reading and this is giving me another. So there's some discordance there. But it's the integration of the different wearables to produce, let's just say, a readiness platform that, that it could be sort of orchestrated, that it's at the user level. So me, Joe, and you, John, we would have our tablet or our phone and we go, oh, look at how we're doing today, and have it as a gauge. Like readiness is at, is anywhere from red to green. Readiness is in the yellow. Maybe that's contingent upon we didn't eat anything the day before. Maybe it was a Sunday and, we were sleeping just kind of intermittently or not at all. And some of these service members they're young. So like, encouraging healthy behaviors is often difficult. So it would be good to, understand like where they are just from a gauge perspective. Kind of like when you get in your car, you turn it on. If something's not working, it's usually flagged, for more recent cars. So so something like that, that's integrating, just like your car does, integrating all the sort of services and widgets it provides, having a sort of heads up display, like, how are you doing today? So that's one of the trends we see. And that's not only on the DoD side, that's, because a lot of things I say are sort of DoD sort of centric, but they're not DoD specific. That's some of the trends we're seeing there. It seems like that's going the way too of the on the civilian side too. And a third trend that is coming to bear, and I hope you and I would agree on this, is the program evaluation component of it, which seems another layer of prescriptive academia, and seemingly, why would you need this type program? So, I think that's an easily defensible statement. I said, well, you kind of need to understand where your baseline is, right? You need to understand where your workforce is, your personnel are. And if you're going to introduce an intervention, this could be, what we talked about before, the integration of a human performance team, of these professionals. What is that doing to sort of some of your key performance indicators, your KPIs? Are injuries going down? Are they even anecdotally telling you that they're sleeping better, that they feel better, that maybe their relationship with their friends or spouses are better? And then you would have some sort of follow-up, right? And the difference between those two, presumably, and in part, is due to your intervention. But the bugaboo there is you don't know the magnitude and what your true return on investment is if you're not measuring what you intend to measure and what you intend to intervene on. I mean, it's fantastic, all the wearables that we have, and it's fantastic, all of the sort of the professionals we have, on these allied care professionals. And to see, and this has been done before, to see that, I'll give you a specific example. I'm not going to name the organization, but just to see the integration of a very small amount of athletic trainers caused one service to have, I think in a year, it was somewhat like 800 less days lost in training, and something to the tune of like $11 million of treatment. Otherwise, they would have incurred. And the athletic trainers, I think their cost was like $2 million. So it's like a net of $9 million for a return on investment. Mm-hmm. And that's just a simple example of just measuring injuries beforehand, introducing athletic trainers, measuring them after the fact, and kind of tying a dollar value to how much an injury would cost. And obviously injuries cost different for different severities of injuries, but the moral of that story is, if you measure something before and after an intervention, you can really demonstrate the return on investment. And that's something that customers like to see, like, well, when you do this, you save X amount of dollars, or when you do this, you save X amount of training days or days, lost, or even presenteeism, like they're there, but they don't perform. So those are some of the, the mega trends that we're seeing. I'm sure there's more, but those are kind of three that I'll stick to, because it's more tactical focused, a little sort of on the commercial side, or a little on the civilian side. But I think it's probably the most appropriate for our conversation.
Yeah, I mean, it's some great areas to see there and see them expanding out. I was having a conversation the other day with a guy just about wearable technology, and
Yeah.
how it's still quite a bit of a black hole for a lot of the guys in the military structure. Because, like, compared with the sporting realm, we've got GPS for
Yeah.
rugby, for football, for soccer, and stuff like that.
Hmm.
And it's just like, right, we know game speeds, we know like work to rest ratios, like
Yeah.
for long periods. Whereas with a lot of the guys, he was saying, like, when he's gone on base, he's great. He gets to see a complete oversight. But as soon as they leave and go out in the field, it's just a
Hmm.
black spot. He has no idea what's going on a lot of times. So it's just like, right, getting the guys back, and getting some sort of wearable sensor that is protected, so the GPS stuff isn't all out there and stuff. But
Yeah.
and actually having an idea of, what exactly is the strain going through these guys on a day-to-day or a month-to-month basis, which is huge.
Yeah, and John, to your point, a lot of a good amount, I should say, to be fair, a good amount of the more progressive research, and again, this is research, this isn't operational, some operational, but mostly research. A good amount of the research in that space in the DoD side has been driven by those sort of UK, Australian sort of more um, more integrated approaches to measuring, like you said, the sort of acute and chronic work ratios, speed,
Mm-hmm.
velocity, change in direction. They had their wearable on, and so and that's for. I mean, that's not a huge scale, right, for a rugby team or for a football team. But that's being used as a model of, well, we can they can measure this, very precisely how much load a person's how much cumulative load a person is on their feet, right, in a very precise manner, very technical manner. um, well, maybe we should do that with our service members, because they don't have the exact same burdens, from a physical performance perspective or physical activity perspective. But the technology, there's proof and concept for what some of the folks in the UK have done, some of the folks in Australia have done. So I think that's an interesting conversation, because, getting back to this sort of feeder, this sort of the way ideas are sort of fed into the military side of physical performance, is a lot of it is from sport.
Yeah.
I would say probably a good amount is from sport, and then sport also takes from the military too.
Definitely.
So there's that interesting crosstalk between the two disciplines.
And now, obviously, for you, dude, since you've been in post and obviously you're looking ahead for trends now, looking for those opportunities and areas of growth, but also, what are the challenges would you say, Joe, are the big ones that are going to be, presented in the tactical space?
Yeah, so I would say certainly on the U.S. side, socializing the industry has always been a challenge. I mean, the NSCA, National Strength Conditioning Association, has their tactical, sort of route that people can get certified through. That there's a dedicated meeting for that. But other than that, and the ACSM has a tactical military performance special interest group. But other than that, it's kind of slim as far as enterprise-wide interest in the field. There are some programs, we talked about, Dr. Bornstein beforehand. He has a great program at the Citadel that looks like tactical physical performance and generates professionals in the field. What I'm driving at is that, I think one of the challenges is is socializing this, to everyone. This podcast is a fantastic way to do that. But sort of getting at the ground floor of where these disciplines start, in my view, is in university. So, again, go back to, Dr. Bornstein, those type programs, I see those programs increasing.
Mm-hmm.
I see them as a challenge now, but I don't see them as a challenge in 10 to 20 years when, the Army is, going to have their enterprise program. The Marine Corps is more than likely going to have their enterprise programs. And there's going to be a drive, to stay with professional teams, college teams. The military is going to have a huge sort of investment in having these professionals within their ranks, besides their service members. So, I think until that force function for these professional organizations like the NSCA come in and say, well, we're going to need more professionals. I think that's coming sooner than later. But right now, I do feel that's a challenge, and there's going to be some catch up being played in the next maybe like 3 to 5 years or so, and be able to, adequately, have a good sort of competitive space for a strength conditioning coach, let's just say, versus like, should I do professional sports? Do I want to do collegiate? What's this military thing about? It sounds intimidating. I was never in the military. I heard that, hundreds and hundreds of times. It's like, it's okay. It's just a different culture. We don't bite, maybe atypical, but, until that socialization, through degree granting programs is sort of, really geared up. And we have a few more programs like Dr. Bornstein has, I think the field will be, it'll be a lot better until that time. Another, it gets back to the, another challenge is that, so you have sports teams, right? You have sports teams, you have professional teams, you have semi-professional teams, you have high school athletics, and you have, the DoD services. And so whether or not, and I don't know the answer to this question, but whether or not, organizations are going to continue to credential, certify, and graduate these professionals at the rate that all these, different entities need them. I mean, that's a question that's going to sort of be bared out in the next 3 to 5 years. I wish I had the answer to that question. I really don't. And I say that this is, kind of in a very, it's tough for me to say because, my job is to be aware of the emerging trends. But if you go to a trade show for wearables or for biometrics, there are more than you could even imagine.
Yeah.
So understanding, does something work in outer space? Does something work underwater? Is it ruggedized? Do you have a forward-facing display? Do you not have a forward-facing display? How are things actually measured? With the black box, right? Like, how is it actually measuring what you intend to measure? Are you getting raw data from it, or are you getting, like a black box data that the company has this proprietary algorithm that shows you some metric that you've never seen in an exercise physiology textbook? Well, I know what heart rate variability is. I know what heart rate is. I know what, blood pressure is, but I don't know what some, this derived score is, from wearable X or wearable Y, and not to mention there are different sensors for different functions. Some measure physiological responses, some measure sort of cognitive responses, some measure just positional responses like we talked about with, UK and Australia. So just being able to stay abreast of the relevancy for companies and also what companies are emerging, what companies are being invested in is also important to know. Like what companies are going to have, long-term backing, what companies will be here the next 5 years. It's very important to know. So having said that, the understanding and acknowledgement of this is an industry that just continues to increase in sort of scope and size is intimidating, but anyone getting into it and kind of, let's just say if there's other aspiring solutions architects out there, I don't know if there is, but that's something you kind of have to have a sort of a keen understanding of. You're not going to know everything. I think I spend a good amount of my time just reading things. If I'm going to the gym, I shouldn't say if I'm going to while I'm at the gym, like, oh, look, I'm reading about this new wearable. I'm reading about this new tag you can put on your skin to measure sweat or temperature, or a pill to measure core body temperature. So it's a challenge, but it's also fun. And you kind of get to understand, like, well, there's 30 different companies kind of all vying for the same market share here.
Cool. No worries, Joe. And I mean, obviously, like you say, there's challenges, but there's growth factors within those as
Yeah.
well, and just preparing for those areas as well of growth and just those opportunities within it. So for guys coming into the field now,
Yeah.
getting ready or getting prepared to come into the field, so they are ready
Mhm.
to sit on this wave of this change as well. What do you think the best advice is for these guys looking to pursue a career in this field?
Yeah, so I mean that's always hard to say, right? Because it's always at the behest of the customer or that client. But I think some conservative um, advice would be you have to, you have to have a drive to want to excel in the field. You have to be interested, like you and I talked about before. No one was setting us up to read muscular development.
Mm-hmm.
I just thought it was really cool. I don't know. Um, so there has to be that drive there and that motivation to kind of want to have the intellectual curiosity to want to learn more. Um, I don't I don't distinguish that because I have a research and development background. Some of the strength conditioning colleagues I have, some of the athletic trainers colleagues I have are just as fervent as reading that literature base and really digging deep and really understanding the history and the culture. And you talk to them and it's like, I am nowhere near as competent as I thought. But you talk to I can sort of keep up with a person that's interested in performance physiology. Like we could talk that language. Um, so that's certainly important. Understanding that there's a certain level of required skills, training, and certifications that I would say jobs often look for, customers often look for, and that being that bachelor's or master's degree, and for a variety of different things. This could be exercise science, exercise physiology, strength conditioning, athletic training, nutrition, occupational therapy, and physical therapy. So there are those sort of degree requirements to confer that you have this sort of requisite knowledge base in your discipline. And then there's also those associated certifications. So for an athletic trainer, like the LAT, like licensed athletic trainer, or NATA, like National Athletic Trainers Association, or CSCS for someone with the strength conditioning background. So those certifications and those degree requirements are, I don't want to say requisite and be so prescriptive, but it seems to me what I've seen from customers, from clients, and combing position descriptions for other companies, just to develop, to understand the competitive landscape. That's what those companies are looking for. That's not to say that's not going to change for degree requirements, but that's what I see currently now. Um, and it's interesting. We talk about this. So we work with some college interns, and they talk about, well, I'm getting my degree, I'm getting my certification. It's like, well, it kind of starts there, so you need that, right? But one of the terms that I've sort of used recently is you have to be able to discriminate yourself above your competition. And so what does that mean? So like, how do I action that? And so this is what I tell people. It's easy. It's like, don't worry, it's easy. So join an organization. I'm so like, this is like, if you're kind of like, kind of writing down like what I say to do, what could work, not what will work, but what could work. And these are let's say trends that I have spoken with other colleagues about, and they go, "Oh, you do that too?" I was like, "I've done that. Like this works, right?" I think it's sort of the same way that you and I got talking, right? The first is joining an organization, especially in school. Most of them offer student memberships, and it's a great way to kind of get in on the ground floor. So NSCA, ACSM, NATA, they all have their professional organizations, their flagship organizations. It'll take you 3 minutes to look it up on Google and just type in student and something will come up. And then once you're a part of that sort of organization, you're able to sort of interact with other people. And I know with COVID, it's a little bit different, but I know traditionally it's like, well, we have functions coming up, and some of these institutions have regional, directorates, so you can meet locally in Virginia, or you can meet locally in Delaware. It's like, I didn't know that. And this, and obviously it's a little bit smaller, you get a less diverse experience, but it's still, you're meeting other people, interested people in your field. And if they're there and they're interested, like, that's the crew you want to affiliate yourself with. So joining an organization, professional organization, is tremendously important. I didn't realize the importance of it until I spoke to one of my colleagues recently, maybe like 2 weeks ago. He goes, "Oh yeah, it's like we met at NSCA like in like 2003 or 2004.
Wow. Okay.
Oh my God. I was like, we did? I was like, I don't remember that. I should have remembered it, but like admittedly, like, I don't remember that. But that was because I joined the organization. That was because I saw there was, student things going on. And and organizations like that are very sort of favorable to students. It helps them grow their membership. It helps them, carry out their edict of, professional growth for burgeoning, professionals in this field. So it's important to them. And I think they try to impart that on their members. Another thing I would tell people, and this is a little more abstract, is to grow your toolbox. Just having that degree in strength and conditioning, let's just say, that's great. But if you know how to, take your program, and you can make a cool little Excel spreadsheet, and you can track your athletes' load over time. You can track their weight over time. You can track their performance over time, and you can demonstrate that to an employer. Well, I have a degree in strength and conditioning, but I also developed this application. It could just be as simple as an Excel spreadsheet. Over time, like, those are favorable things to an employer, like additional skills, like, and the ability to take information that's just, a bunch of iron with numbers written on them, and to contextualize that and say, okay, well, here's what you're doing over time. So you actually develop a product off of something that, I think any, really good strength and conditioning coach is going to be doing anyways, monitoring their athletes. And so there's different, you can go out and just find a myriad of certifications, in Excel or in Adobe, on how to do stuff like that. But, I would say the third and the most important aspect of this field, John, is that interested people are interested in talking about their work.
Yeah.
I mean, have you found that to be true?
Absolutely, dude. Yeah, if you can seek them out quite easily, I find, and like most people are very open and happy to chat about their work.
Yeah, I mean, I got to tell you, it's a humbling experience for someone. It's like, oh, I read an article you wrote. Can we talk about it? It's like, you did? Like, you're the one? And it's almost like funny, right? But a lot of times research, like, it reaches a limited audience, and you're like, well, I wish more people would read the research. But when you have people reach out to you, like, that's fantastic. But what I tell people is, I mean, so let's just say you're interested in strength and conditioning, right? And then you learn about, a coach at Baylor or something like that, one of their sprint coaches at Oregon or something like that. Just go to LinkedIn, just say, hey, this is who I am. I heard about you, like, through this means. It could be at another NSCA conference or a USAW conference or something like that. Or, you read something that maybe they put in, like, the NSCA's, like, strength and conditioning journal. Say, hey, like, I'm really interested in this. I'd love to learn more. Like, can we have a chat? And probably, I would say maybe 8 times out of 10. And I've done this with people that are, I've done this with undergraduates that have some work. I recently did this with an undergraduate in the UK that had some work come out for the Ministry of Defense. I reached out to him, was like, what is this all about? Like, can you tell me more? Like, this is really cool.
Yeah.
Just because I was interested. Like, I couldn't really figure out, like, just from the paper, like what they were driving at. And then I've reached out to, I reached out to, like, a vice provost of a university. He was the senior author on a paper, and like, this is, and he was the corresponding author, was like, this is really interesting. Like, you have like 10 minutes just to talk about your research. Like, I really think this is interesting, and nothing more. Like, I didn't want anything out of it.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to kind of hear what his thoughts are, just like you and I are doing, is talking shop. And Vice Provost got back to me maybe 2 hours. And this is just LinkedIn, right? Well, I guess the one of the things I failed to mention is, have an updated LinkedIn profile.
Mm-hmm.
Players look at it, people look at it. It's important. It's also good to sort of document your successes too there. So those are the three, I guess, four things I would tell people to do. They're sort of very tactical, very practical, and frankly, you could probably do all of those on a weekend, and kind of go forth from there.
Definitely, man, definitely. And like it echoes a lot of stuff I've always said to students I've chatted to or interns and stuff. I say, like, your education is important, but it's very much just your ticket to the dance. It's knowing people and having personal connections that'll get you out on the floor as well and get you into where you want to be. But like you say, it's just like reaching out and having conversations with people on things you find interesting. I mean, that's how we hooked up. Contacted me and said, hey, can you tell me a little bit more about the podcast? And here we are now, just having this great conversation.
Yeah. Well, and this is like, these are like force multipliers, right? Because I heard about you because of some of my colleagues, some of which I went to graduate school with, some of which I knew from the field. But I just like, I saw it on LinkedIn because like a friend of, someone that I knew liked your, probably like your fourth or fifth podcast or something.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what is this? There's a human performance podcast? Like call me, wow, oh my God. And so there's the traditional ones, right? That are, kind of very, very, very on the nose. Like, if you want to be a strength conditioning coach, like, you listen to that podcast, like, that's great. But like things like this, where it's more conversational, where it's more, where's the industry going? Like, how did you get there? Like, more sort of story oriented, let's just say. I think these are really good because they could provide, getting back to what you said about breaking into the field. They can provide resources and sort of practical ways to which a person like that senior in, or fourth year, right? In undergraduate could go about, materialistically enhancing their career trajectory for the better. Now, it might not work out for them, and it takes grinding, and it takes effort, it takes, long-term prospecting. But if you're passionate, like, just reach out to people and begin to establish yourself, and go, oh, how did you become successful? What are you doing? What's this paper about that I just read? So again, interesting people want to talk about their work.
Definitely. 100% agree with that. 100% agree, Joe. Now, I want to pull it back briefly, mate, because I know we chatted a bit about, your role at KBR as a solutions architect and that, and I very much touched on just like my perception of KBR from the outside looking in, just from over in the UK, and that, like, for anyone, like, especially for the guys here in the UK or elsewhere, for Europe or Australia and that, who may not be familiar with KBR, can you just tell us, what exactly KBR are doing to, enhance tactical population groups?
Yeah. So KBR is a provider. We acquire these contracts. We bid and are or are not awarded certain contracts. Things that fall within the health and human performance space. Some of the ones we have now, support Special Operations Command. Some support Air Force Research Laboratory. Some support NASA. Which are tremendously interesting, involved, and from my perspective, like, I hear about this, I go, I'm involved in this. Like, this is like incredible. Like, this is like, I couldn't imagine this, right? But sort of more part of the pun, more tactically speaking, KBR has, the ability to sort of have embedded professionals within those units, right? And especially within, the special operations sort of paradigm. And we are doing, what we talked about with one of the sort of the mega trends for embedding those professionals into units. at the level to which they can be scaled. And again,
Mm-hmm.
these are the strength conditioning coaches, the dietitians, athletic trainers, data scientists, which is a sort of new term that the DoD sees as fruitful. And I should definitely not fail to mention that some of the new requirements, or I shouldn't say new requirements, but some of the new efforts in recognizing the benefits of cognitive behavioral health issues are being recognized by the services. They're now looking for those type, individuals with this sort of, cognitive psychology background with this sort of sports slant to it. So we're providing those professionals, again, at the unit level, that service members can come to and, come to them with their challenges. That this could be physical, mental, spiritual, and they see that appropriate allied healthcare provider, and they get the services what they need. Again, this comes out of the hospital, goes to that to that service member level, and allows them sort of the return to duty that much quicker, because they have the sort of that, I want to say, on-site presence, but they have as much on-site presence as possible to get the service that they require.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, one of the key things as well with you, Joe, that you're doing is you're developing these key relationships of organizations as well.
Yeah.
How you managing that? Such a diverse backgrounds between industry and academia.
Yeah.
How you managing that, and how's that helping to develop organizations as a whole?
Well, I mean, so we always have to start with what do we want to accomplish, right?
Mm-hmm.
How does this fall within our strategy? And what does the customer want? So if we're, hand in glove with what the customer wants, what the customer's wishes are, and what we feel like we can deliver a superior solution to, we'll then pursue that customer. And so oftentimes that requires, because just like any, research article, there's not one institution, there's multiple institutions on it. So almost like a consortium of is on a lot of papers now. So what that means for us is we have to partner. We have to partner with other academics. We have to partner with industry. We have to partner with commercial side. And so there's always been that sort of long-standing academia industry partnership. And some of the work we do right now, we have those partners to provide solutions for our customers. Again, we from a company perspective, we can't provide all the solutions for that singular customer, but we know if we strategically align ourselves with certain, let's just say, academic institutions that do X, Y really well, and we do X good and Y, we do it good as well. But when you sort of combine those two and you synergize, you get a sort of force multiplier in what you can deliver in value to the customer. So again, that's all at the behest of the customer. We'll align with partners. It's not necessarily academia. It's partners that are that also align with the customer's needs, that can deliver solutions to the customer, and that wants to work. That we have this sort of mutuality in wanting to work with one another, because our partnerships are all based off of strong relationships, and these aren't necessarily strong business relationships. These are good relationships, good high character relationships. As what I would say, we want to deal with high character individuals to deliver what's best for our customers.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And John, it gets back to what we talked about before, reaching out to them, saying, reaching out to that partner and saying, I see you do, you do physical activity assessment really well, or you do gait analysis really well.
Mm-hmm.
We have, we would love to partner with you with this opportunity, and what do you say? And then so we have that conversation. And again, always productive conversations. People always are very interested in speaking about their work. I want to say necessarily to us, but like they're always interested in socializing their work, which is great. And if everyone's receptive and the sort of the stars align, we partner.
I think that's the cool thing though that you mentioned there as well. Like, humble enough to know that, like, you don't always have all the solutions to the customer, but you can
Mm-hmm.
make those connections as well.
Yeah.
And I think having that connection between academia, business, and industry is just huge, and it's a win-win situation, I'd say, for
Yeah.
everyone, because you're really driving things forward.
Yeah, and they're force multipliers, right? Because
Mhm.
if let's just say academia is our partner, and if we're a more well-known entity within academia, then maybe maybe a student hears about us and hears about what we do and says, "What do you do? Like, how do I get into that?" And we, oh well, here's what you need to do. So there's multiple sort of tentacles to this. I mean, obviously, if it's the intent is just to have a good business partner, there's that, right? And that's our focus intent. But if there are positive offshoots that again they're mutually sort of beneficial, then that's better that's the best situation for everyone, frankly.
No, that's cool, dude. That is awesome, and obviously just excited to see, like, from a bystander standpoint, to see how that grows and continues to develop as well for you guys. One thing I was going to ask you, Joe, because obviously we've had the chance to chat here a bit, and I mean, you've had quite a few conversations off air as well, and just like it's very clear, like your interest in knowledge and seeking out and looking at the research and stuff like that. So the one question I always have for every guest, because I'm very interested to know what they're doing for their own development, is just, what is a book, an app, or website recommendation you found useful for either your own education or your own development?
Okay, so these so I have like I'll have two answers for this one. They're completely divorced from one another. So on the science side, there's a book, and if your listeners haven't heard of this, run out and get it. It's called Super Training by Veroshansky. So I would say maybe the US audience isn't as familiar with his work, but this work precedes Tudor Bonepad. This is like this seminal sports science book for how people trained in, I don't want to say predominantly in the USSR, but it seems, in reading that, it's more Eastern European based. And I remember seeing that on Amazon when it sold only books and thinking, I've never heard of this book before. And then I read some of the excerpts from it, and I think I was a senior. I was either junior or senior in college, and again I was trying to like put together all this human performance stuff from bodybuilding, and I remember reading that with this weird like orange and purple cover with this like figure on the front. I go, what is this? And I remember reading 2 pages of the preview and my mind completely being blown away that these programs existed, and there's tons of references, and most of the references are in other languages. But I've never seen it, translated, but that there are ways to implement scientifically based programs. Like I to this day, like I remember seeing, like I remember it was very vivid, like everything was very vivid. Like I remember exactly where I was and what I was thinking. Like I cannot believe this exists. And I think the book was like, the book at the time was an expensive book, but I remember getting it and reading that thing, and I probably read, geez, I probably read that thing maybe 30 times cover to cover. And there's notes in there that, but probably the first 5 times I read it, I had know a word of what was going on in it. I mean, I knew like load progressions, but I didn't know like the science behind some of the stuff, and the science is inlaid into it. And they discuss some of the science very much on the nose, but it was a completely transformative way that I looked at human performance, strength and conditioning, and just turned my world on its head to say like, wow, like this is really cool. I mean, there are some existing, smaller books on strength and conditioning, but nothing like this. Nothing like this. So I would encourage it if for just a diversity of sort of thought and ways of looking at strength and conditioning. If anyone in your audience hasn't heard of Super Training by Yuri Veroshansky, to go out and look at it. I mean, we might take some digging to find it, to find the actual book.
I think
But
it is quite hard to find at some points nowadays. But I've got a copy, mate, and
you
like you
gotta,
say, it's a great book, but it's heavy going. Honestly, like you say, like it's not a page turner. You'll spend a while on a page and like go away, consider it, come back, reread it, and then try and move on.
yeah. So that actually, so actually, I have another one to throw in there. There's a and this goes into really, that turn of, oh, this research thing is really cool. there's a gentleman, there's a former researcher physician named Ansel Keys, and he's known for a few things. The total cholesterol argument, the 7-country study, and those are controversial, and I've recognized that. So I'm not here to sing those praises for those sort of research endeavors, but he did a series of experiments in and around the Korean War. This is actually after the Second World War, at the University of Minnesota Hygiene Laboratory, and came out with a 2-part series of books that each one I think is probably between 700 and 800 pages, called The Biology of Human Starvation. And if you want to see, research that, and truth be told, it couldn't be performed today. But if you want to see some of the military sort of driven research, what was going on in the 50s, and to see its impact, and i.e. how we then subsequently refed our soldiers into the Korean War, how we developed rations based off of these findings, how we changed some hygiene standards based off of these findings, knowing the implications for tremendous amount of physical activity, not eating, not sleeping. And if you want to, again, not a page turner, but if you want the tomb of all the deleterious effects of human starvation and what it does to, to human body, I would say to, I don't think you can find this, but to get a copy from maybe like an old, like a library that will sort of, that has access to older books, and just thumb through some of the pages and look at some of the pictures and look at some of the rationales to why they did this, and it really wow, like this is intense. It's a hard read, but it's tremendously interesting. It was tremendously influential in my career, to say, like, a lot, it's like some, not all, but some of these issues in the world still exist, and not so much on the military side, but in other sort of developing nations. And if you kind of like have that perspective of like, this is at least to me, that this could be the worst case scenario of what our service members could be going through had we otherwise not developed these countermeasures. I think having that perspective is a real sort of eye opener, and it certainly was for me. But again, not a quick read, not a fun read, but an interesting read. And again, it's Biology of Human Starvation by Ansel Keys. And just more recently, there's a book, and I kind of, it's funny. I I just was reading something where a bunch of celebrities were promoting this book. It's called Principles by Ray Dalio. And this book you can actually find on like Audible or something like that. So this is a good page turner. It just talks about business. It talks about developing relationships in business. It talks about developing, I don't want to say your brand, because I think that's kind of becoming a sort of a hackneyed thing to say, like, a personal way to express yourself in your given industry. But it talks about those things, and it kind of made me, and I read this in around the time I started with KBR, and it made me understand that you need to, or a professional should, be able to take in the industry, but also give back to the industry. So, developing that sort of, that, I want to say brand again, but developing that, and your brand can be that you're a dependable worker who's knowledgeable in the field, who's producing high quality, manuscripts. And that's great. That's fine. I think that's a very noble, endeavor, but for someone like me, I read that and I go, well, I need to, be more reliable in my knowledge base, so my teammates can look to me and without, dropping the ball, like I can give you the breakdown of this market. But again, that comes back to sort of, recognizing your own personal brand and your value to your organization. But some other things though, the books, I would say finding a mentor. Mentors are tough to find, but if you're able to engage with one, it's not like you're entering into a formal process. Like, do you want to be my mentor? Right? That sounds almost childish, right? And I know it's very pie in the sky, but with Dr. Nindal, I was, it's been one of the best relationships, not personal, not professional, both personal and professional relationships that I've ever had with him. And this is, and getting back to student membership, I met this gentleman in a parking lot at his student ACSM conference that he was going to be the judge on for posters on. And this was 20 plus years ago. And, I still talk to him on a regular basis. So, and, things about career growth come up, and then things about family come up, and it's both ways. And so, if you find someone that's willing to, take that investment with you, it really pays off dividends down the road. You always have an advocate. You always have someone to bounce ideas off of, and you'll always have someone. And this is, this has been my case. Is you'll always have someone to say like, don't do that. Don't do that. Like, I know you don't do that to yourself. Like, maybe, don't make the decision, or don't move, or don't take this position. So it's good to have those people in your corner who actually care about you as a person, and inlay, the professional side to see how you'd be agile as a person to your decisions.
No, that's awesome. Some great resources mentioned there, Joe, and I'll make sure I'll stick them into our show notes as well. Obviously, Joe, once again, it's been awesome just to actually finally get a chance to sit down and have like a nice long conversation with you, dude. I think you've given like a lot of great information here for anyone who's listening as well. If anyone's listening, it's just like, right, cool, I've got a couple of questions for Joe, or want to reach out and find out a bit more, what's the best ways they can do that?
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously, if they come to you, and you can just provide my information. I'm an open book, but I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. I think you are too, so that's always good, right? Just look me up, Joseph Alamini on LinkedIn. I'm also on ResearchGate, the same name, and that's another good way to have people get exposure to the sort of the fields, because people are connected to one another, kind of like they're connected on like Facebook or Twitter, or my email. If it's just joe.alamini@us.kbr.com. Just email me directly. I take emails at all times of night, so I'm happy to help any interested people in the field out, help navigate, help sort of sidestep landmines, and help just brainstorm and kick ideas around, and just be a good professional in the field. And again, we're all in it together. So if one person has helped out, I mean that's a sort of success in my book.
Sweet, that's awesome. That's awesome, Joe. I'll make sure I'll stick in those links into our show notes as well, along with your resources, so anyone listening can just reach out to you directly. Sure. Joe, thank you once again, mate. It's been a pleasure actually getting some time just sit and just chat with you and pick your brains on a few things as well, mate. So thank you very much.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Hey, no worries, Joe. Take care, buddy.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Hi guys, really hope you enjoyed this week's episode of the Monarch Human Performance Podcast. I just wanted to say thank you for your continued support to the show. We're slowly growing each week and getting more and more downloads, which is truly incredible for such a niche-specific podcast. To continue supporting us, can I ask you to do me a simple favor? First of all, Subscribe to this podcast on whatever platform you're using so you can receive each new episode as soon as it's released. Secondly, if you found something educational, if it made you see a different perspective, or if you took something away from this podcast that made you better, please leave us a review, as it means a lot to me, and please share the show. This will help us to grow the show and really get this information out to a lot more people.